Good evening, everybody. Keith Engle here for TGI Sports Talk's college sports, basically football and basketball huddle. How are we doing tonight? 2 seconds late. I apologize for that. Just got off the Northeast Professional Sports Show with Mac on Mac Sports or Northeast Streaming Sports as well. So great. We had a great spirited conversation over there. We got a lot to talk about tonight. I mean, the show's totally going to take a different direction I thought we're going to go because we got breaking news. The greatest college football coach of all time has decided to retire, Nick Saban, and we'll probably be talking a lot about that. We'll also talk about the Michigan championship, Harbaugh. We'll get a little basketball in. But first, I want to welcome everybody watching on TGI Sports Talk on YouTube, Facebook, obviously, and also Twitter. I know Twitter has really helped spiked our viewership a lot, which we like. Also, everybody watching on Let's Talk Sports on YouTube and Northeast Streaming Sports. We're on Facebook and YouTube right now, and you'll see the show on the Roku channel, Northeast Streaming Sports Roku channel on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Quick shout out to Ralph Williams at RW Media, specifically the Sports Corner that he does with Smokin' Jim Frazier every Tuesday at 5 o'clock on WBVP 1230 AM, 99.3 FM in Pittsburgh. And we got a lot to talk about tonight, man. And a thumbs up, DDH, and off we go. Who's with us here so far tonight? Guys, I'll take your comments. Good evening again, Sonia. And Sonia says she's sharing the show. Thank you for that, by the way. Sonia, I'll be on with Sonia at 9 o'clock. Sonia, put the information about the show in the comments, if you would, and I'll certainly share that here as we go through tonight. But I look forward to being with Sonia at 9. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff, NFL coaching, playoff news, Nick Saban probably. Sonia called that last week. Good job. Our good friend Rick Sherlock is with us. Good to have you with us, Rick. Lots of news, Sonia says, for sure. Dave Guyette up in Johnstown, good to have you with us. I'm doing well. Actually, Amsterdam, you're back in. I forgot. Dave, good to have you with us. Not a lot of Syracuse news to talk about. Maybe a little basketball later. We'll see. But good to have you all with us. And, guys, as we go through the show tonight, feel free to bring up you guys drive. It's very similar to the Sunday Stream of Consciousness. You guys drive the energy on this show. And I know that once football starts to wane a little bit, we have a little bit of that less energy. Once we get to March Madness, things start to pick up again a little bit. But certainly a lot to talk about tonight. I don't even have a banner for it, as Nick Saban announces just about the time I went up to have a bite to eat before going on the 6 o'clock show. The news broke that Nick Saban had talked to his team today and decided he was done at 72 years old. Look at greatest college coach of all time. 7 championships, 6 at Alabama. People like to say, wow, he took over Alabama. Who can't win at Alabama? Nobody won at Alabama after Bear Bryant, except for Gene Stallings for a couple of years. I mean, they had some decent years, but they were basically, except for one championship, nothing going on for 2 decades there until Nick Saban came in to the picture. A little bit more than 2 decades. I hope, I certainly pray Nick Saban has a longer retirement than Bear Bryant, because when Bear Bryant retired at 70, and by the way, if you don't think college football ages you, and today, whether it's the water or whether he's had plastic surgery, take a look at Bear Bryant at 70. He retired at 70 years old, and take a look at Nick Saban at 72. I would have thought that Bear Bryant was about 20 years older than Nick Saban from the pictures. But Bear Bryant sadly passed away roughly a month after he retired in, I want to say 1983. I don't think it's even a question. You know, I know we've talked about a lot on my shows, this show, the Stream of Consciousness. We've had debates about this. You know, there are a lot of great college coaches out there, Bear Bryant being one of them. John McKay, Woody Hayes, whatever you think about Woody Hayes and the way he went out. Nick Saban, to me, the greatest college coach of all time. Not even close. To be able to navigate the waters today, well, actually 20 years ago, 17 years ago, he spent 17 years there. It's not even a debate in my mind who the greatest coach is. Did he have great players? Was he able to recruit? Yeah, but Perkins, forgetting his first name for some reason, Dennis Francione, the boys, Shula, Mike Price didn't even make it to the sidelines because he got caught in a strip club. Gene Stallings had some moderate success and a championship, so that's a successful run. But if you think it's just because he was at Alabama that he is the greatest coach and won all these championships, you couldn't be more wrong. Because there was a lot of guys 20 years before, and they got one championship. And I know somebody that will probably weigh in on this topic is John DeLon, our resident SEC elitist. I know he's not a Bama fan necessarily. But John's our resident authority on everything in the SEC. And, John, I'd love your opinion on Nick Saban. He coached your team to a national championship. Don't know whether you harbor ill feelings towards Nick because he left the LSU job to go to the Dolphins, which was not a good fit for Nick. He did get them to a playoff one year, but, overall it wasn't a good fit. And he went back to Alabama. So he was the enemy for a long time, but, he was a driving force in what you and others, and I'm not denying the greatness of the SEC. He was a driving force in the SEC becoming the monster that it is today. So it's going to be interesting too. And by the way, the talk is going to come up about who's going to replace him. Dabo Swinney's name is going to come up first thing, guaranteed. I haven't even looked because I didn't have time to look. Guarantee you his name will be at the top of the list because he's been talked about for years as being the next guy. Lane Kiffin will come up. I can't see that happening. Among others, obviously. Steve Garsazian will probably come up. Jim Harbaugh will not come up. Two names I know won't come up are Jim Harbaugh and Mike Price. Rick says it's unfortunate Woody will be remembered for how his career ended and not for how his teams performed. I agree 100%. Woody was a great coach, and the ending was really ugly. If you don't remember, he basically forearmed a Clemson player in the throat during a Gator Bowl his last year. I knew the guy's name. I think it was Bauman. I don't know why. Mike Bauman. I could be right. I could be wrong. But Woody was fired very shortly thereafter. You can't do that stuff. But Woody was a great coach and for decades at Ohio State. And people will forget that. But still does not, in my mind, reach the level of what Coach Saban accomplished at Alabama and LSU and Michigan State to a lesser degree, and in Toledo before that. There we go. There's Sonia's information. You can catch all things football from a lady's perspective and on YouTube. I think you can do it on Facebook and YouTube, if I'm not mistaken, but you've got the URL right there, guys. You can copy that from I think you can copy it from the comments, and you can put it in your browser, and you'll end up there. So and share Sonia's show. And we welcome, people who might be watching us from Sonia's page. We appreciate the share tonight. And if I can remember, Sonia, we'll do that as we go on tonight as well. I'll try to do that as well. So there's the information for Sonia. We're glad to have her with us tonight, and I look forward to joining her. John DeLon, I have no problem with Nick, but I'm glad he's gone. You would be glad he's gone because he's, obviously every year, Kirby Smart. And by the way, Kirby Smart's name will come up. He's not leaving Georgia for Alabama. I don't see that happening. And Kirby Smart, not to get off the topic here, but it's part of the topic. Kirby Smart, we had a little discussion about this in the chat room earlier. Kirby Smart's name has been bantered a little bit about with the Falcons job. He's not going to the NFL. Kirby Smart's not going to the NFL, especially not to Atlanta. I don't think. I mean, I should never say never anymore. I would think John's happy he's gone because of the competition. It's rumored that Nick told Bama he was retiring before the season. I think they already have an agreement in place with Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning's name I know would come up as well. I believe, well, Lanning coached mostly, I think, in the SEC at Georgia, if I'm not mistaken. Might have been a graduate. I think he spent 1 year as like a graduate assistant or a lower level assistant years ago. That'd be interesting. No, I think, he's leaving a great job at Oregon, but Oregon is here. I'm getting my hand in the screen. Oregon's here. Alabama's way up here, right? So that would be interesting. That's an interesting name to come up, though, John. And I know that will be on the list as well. Good evening, Anthony Price. How are you? Your coach might leave Oregon for Alabama. It's possible. Dan Lanning's a really good coach. We talked about it on this show, and not quite as much as we did on the Sunday Stream of Consciousness. After that first Oregon game, he was getting lambasted for his play calling, going for it on fourth down. I disagreed with the one around the half and whatnot. But I love his demeanor. I love the fact that he tried to end the game against Washington the first time with a first down. I mean, he's in a situation here. If he punts it, if he punts it and they lose the game, he's going to get ripped. If he goes for the first down, he's going to get ripped. You play to win the game, not lose the game. You don't play not to lose. So I like his makeup a lot. Dan Lanning would be a great coach. I think Dabo's, and I know that probably John will not think so. I think Dabo's going to be high on this list. Problem with Dabo is going to be the same problem he has at Clemson right now, is that he will not embrace. I don't want to either. He will not embrace the new reality that we live in with the NIL and transfer portal and everything else. And you have to be successful today. It's not going away. I mean, I've had to temper my feelings about it. It's a reality, and you can't waste energy on things you can't control like that forever. I tend to be like a dog with a bone in these situations myself. He's too smart. Oh, that's funny, Rick. That's a good one. Rick's a Perth graduate, so we all have this great bad pun reality. He is too smart to take the Atlanta job. I found it on a couple of sites today. Kirby Smart. This was all somebody else saying Kirby. The Atlanta was interested in talking to Kirby. That doesn't mean Kirby's interested in the job. I do not think there's any way Kirby Smart's going to Atlanta. I will tell you that Alabama, even though I don't think he's going there, Alabama's got to make the phone call. How do you not make the phone call? You have to. UGA is much more tame fan base than Bama. No way Kirby wants that nightmare. It's true. I mean, I went through these coaches. Do I still have them here? I mean, I looked at these coaches. Where is it? Crap. I don't have it on here. I had it on my phone. I left my phone upstairs. Anyway, I talked about some of the coaches. Perkins. Ate him up alive. I think he was like 30-26. Let me look at this real quick. Bear with me 1 second. But John's right. It's especially now, the fans are spoiled. They're like us Patriot fans, right? They're all spoiled because of their success. And it's going to be very tough for the next coach. Just like the next coach who followed Bear Bryant, it's going to be very, very tough to continue what he has built there. So after Bear Bryant left, he left in 1982. After the 82 season, Ray Perkins, I can remember Ray's last name. He was a coach of the Giants at the time, was an Alabama grad. Went there, and he was there 3 years, and he went a total of, I don't know where I got 30-26. Is this right? What the hell? Don't they make these things so you can read the damn things here, right? I guess I can look at it, line it up with. So Ray Perkins, 48-32. That's not getting it done, right? 3 years. Bill Curry, very good coach, very good football player. Another, I think he was a Kentucky grad. He coached later on at Kentucky. He's 36-26. Gene Stallings, 87-62. Not a great record. Does have the national championship in 1992. Mike DeBose, after Gene Stallings retired. The only guys who left here on their own so far was Gene Stallings, I believe. Mike DeBose goes 47-24. Dennis Francione, how'd they hire him? 25-17. Mike Price, 0-0 because he had to visit the strip clubs after his introductory press conference. Coach at Washington State. He did have the luxury of coaching one Drew Bledsoe there, by the way. Mike Shula takes over, goes 49-10. Not terrible, but no SEC championships, I don't believe. No national championships, surely. And after that, I guess Joe Kins, he was an interim after Mike Shula was let go. Nick Saban comes in 2007, just goes 189-27. I'm sorry. What is that? 216. This is ridiculous how you can't read these things. Yes, he's 189-27 at Alabama, 216 wins. So that would make him, actually, that would make Mike Shula 10-23. Now that I think about it. Francione 17-8. The Bows was only one game over 500. This is even worse than I thought. Anyway. It's possible this will go backwards from here. Bama doesn't want damaged goods, otherwise known as Dabo Swinney. Why is he damaged goods? Because he stuck to his principles. He had a good finish this year. He's 9-4. This team, it's the first year I believe they won less than double digits, and everybody thinks that Dabo's spoiled goods, damaged goods, to use John's quote. Why? Because he had a couple of down years. I mean, I can argue the last 9 years, Clemson and Alabama were pretty much neck and neck, except for the last couple. Dabo, again, I don't know that he's damaged goods, but Dabo's stubborn and he will not embrace the new realities of college football. And if he doesn't, he'll be damaged goods for sure, because the Clemson program will continue to sink. That doesn't mean Dabo's a bad football coach. Dabo's just not playing on a level playing field. That's the biggest problem with Dabo Swinney. Whether you think he's damaged goods or not, he has been the name most mentioned over the last half a decade-ish as the eventual successor to Nick Saban. As I said, a bunch of other names will come up. John may be very right about Dan Lanning. His name will come up on that list for sure. And maybe there is an agreement there. I don't know. I would think it's tampering, but that's just me. But Lane Kiffin's name will come up. There's no way he's going to Alabama. There's no way they're going to hire him, probably. Scarsagian. I'm sure there's some others. Maybe they'll hire a coordinator. Maybe Tommy Reese will get the job. That's a joke, by the way. Good evening, Kenny Gifford. Good to have you with us tonight. Another Perth grad with us. There's a little skip in your mic. Is there? Wonder why. What are you hearing? I apologize, guys. I wonder if it's because I got the fan going over there. Could be me. I'm moving around a little bit, too. A little excitable tonight. So if our audio is a little off, I apologize tonight, guys. So that's the big news of the night. Again, this is probably... Is anybody else going to win 6 national championships at a school again? I mean, Kirby Smart, he's got a couple. He's got 4 to go. And you see how level the playing fields are getting, how many more teams. And listen, I know John DeLon doesn't like the 12-team playoff, but it's going to open the door for more teams to have a chance at a national championship. This would have been a very interesting year to start this year. And it's interesting to see what the SEC is going to look like without Nick Saban. As I said, it is without a doubt. I mean, again, I've said this, again, I've gotten into debates with John before about the SEC, and it's not the only place good football is being played, but it is the best football conference in the country. I don't think I've ever said that directly, that it wasn't. I've only said it's not the only place good football is being played. That's all I've ever said. And it's become the dominant conference in the country. It's dominated the 14 playoff. Alabama with their, I think 4 championships, I want to say. Georgia with 2, LSU with 1. It's pretty good when you're winning half of them. Because college football has changed and Dabo refuses to change with it, and most definitely make him, well, again, it will make him damaged goods if he doesn't change. I don't disagree. You can't hire Dabo. So we're on the same page here, John. I don't know that I'd call him damaged goods at this point. I mean, he can't get the job. Even if he's not going to be offered the job unless he says he's going to move forward with the times, right? So if he won't change his approach and he won't change what his approach to the NIL and the portal, you're right. He can't compete for natties. I'm using the SEC elitist terms. Vrabel at Alabama? I don't think so. I mean, I don't see an Ohio State alum. Now, again, Vrabel's an interesting name because there were some rumors that if Ryan Day were pushed aside or Ryan Day decided to go to the NFL, which doesn't appear it's going to happen this year, that Mike Vrabel was going to be who Ohio State wanted to hire. But Mike Vrabel, if that's the context of your comment, Kenny, Mike Vrabel's not going to Alabama. In fact, Mike Vrabel's probably, because Ohio State, I would think Ohio State would be the only college job that Mike Vrabel would be interested in, I would think. But there's a lot of money in the college game, so maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, to put it in terms I can better understand. I like it when you... See, I like it when John talks to me like I'm 5. Table's a giraffe. It's an inside joke for those of you who have not been following my commentary on the Michigan and Harbaugh situation. John thinks I harbor ill feelings, ill will, whatever you want to say about drafts because I keep using them as, the signs they get put up to call plays in college football. Food for thought. Again, it's possible. Listen, as we've seen recently, anything's possible. I can't say no way. And Mike Vrabel's a great coach. And Mike Vrabel's very likely to end up coaching this coming year if he wants to coach. And he'll probably coach somewhere that will be very happy about. But doesn't fit the context of this show. Karen Belk, good evening. Nick Saban is retiring, and I take it you're an Alabama fan, Karen. Sad. It is sad in a way. Listen, I'm not a Bama fan, but and again, I think most of my audience can attest to this. I'm a huge college football fan. I enjoy big stories. I would root for Alabama and root against them. I bet them to beat Michigan. Didn't happen. But I still think this last year of Nick Saban's career is maybe his best coaching job. The way they started this season, the way they turned things around and got better and better and better. With the laughy face up there. Karen Belk. So maybe Karen's, I was going to say maybe that was sarcasm, but it's not. Bama fan. She's been a Bama fan since the 60s. So Bama, here, Karen, so you can comment on this. I've said for a long time that Nick Saban is the greatest football coach in the history of college football. And one of the other top 5, top 3, maybe second, is Bear Bryant. And it's tough to replace a legend, as I'm sure Karen remembers, as I've talked about. I don't know if you were here, Karen. I was talking about Alabama's a hard time replacing Bear Bryant with Ray Perkins, Bill Curry, Gene Stallings, who had some success and a national championship. 62-25 overall. I was unfair with the numbers I read before because Wikipedia is not giving me the right columns. Mike DeBose, Dennis Francione, Mike Price, who never got to coach a game because of strip clubs. Mike Shula. Come on. You don't win just because you're at Alabama. It's very obvious. Great coaches win no matter where you are. Great programs only take you so far. You need a good coach to shepherd them. And I'm sure Karen, who's been a fan since the 60s, can appreciate that. This could be a rough transition because it didn't go well before. Ray Perkins was a very respected coach, had turned the Giants around a bit, and was an Alabama grad. And I don't remember a big uproar of disapproval when Ray Perkins was hired, but it certainly got to be a pretty good chorus of disapproval when he lost 15 games in 3 years, which was unheard of at Alabama at that time. So you don't win. You don't win just because you're at a great program. So it's going to be very hard. Steve Orpello. The Perk guys are out tonight. Michigan. Let's get into some other stuff. We can continue to talk about Coach Saban. We don't have to discontinue that conversation, but let's did I even have the right? I don't even know if I had the right. I think I did. Let's talk about this a little bit. So the last 14 playoffs is in a book. We talked about the semis last week. We had a final. I liked Washington a lot. Steve says here, sorry, Steve, I didn't mean to. We'll get into the final. No penalties were called on Michigan. They were a far better team. Again, I didn't see any obvious penalties that should have been called necessarily. Maybe, again, you get a couple grabs here and there. 34-13. This game, to me, turned on 2 plays. If they'd gone a little bit differently, I think Washington would have been in this game. In the second quarter, Penix, for one of the few times all night, had a very clean pocket. There was nobody even near him. And Adon, I can never say these guys' names. Adunzi. Hopefully I got that right. Adunzi, or I'm close. He's a great, great receiver. He's wide open. He's got a touchdown. I believe it's 17-10 at the time. It's a touchdown. And Penix just missed him. It was a horrible throw. Maybe some miscommunication because Adunzi did get turned around. But that play was pivotal. It was a 4th down play. It was a touchdown, and they didn't convert. And then the very first drive of the second half, Washington gets the ball. They're still down only 17-10, right, at the half. Michigan had run for 170-some yards in the first half. In the first quarter, they could have blown Washington out. Washington's defense, as I said before the game, would step up and make big stops at big moments. They gave up a ton of yardage, but they had some big stops, held them to field goals and not touchdowns. but 17-10 coming out of the half. They get the ball, and then he throws up that whatever that was. He's getting tackled. You can't just throw the ball up for grabs. Great play by the Michigan defensive back. Can't remember his name now. I don't think it was. I guess it was Grant. The ball's tipped by the receiver. The receiver did the best he could to try to keep this interception from happening. These two plays were pivotal. If these two plays go a different way, you might have a different outcome. But, again, if is a big word in the English language. Yes, welcome aboard, Orp. Good to have you in. So I hope you're doing well, Orp. I know Stephen has had some physical issues in the last year or so. Stephen, I hope you're doing well. Certainly keep good wishes and out there for you. So, and I'm glad to have you on the show. Happy to have you with us. I know you popped in late Sunday. I felt kind of bad because we were just wrapping up the show. John DeLon, do you know that the contingent of Bama boosters who were against the price higher were the ones who took him to the strip club? Not shocking. Got him drunk, then encouraged him to use his university's credit card. I did not know that. Whether that's true, John, I will take you at your word because I'm not going to have a way to verify it. But if that's the case, Mike Price, I mean, that, to me, it's not really a defense of Mike Price. And I like that Mike Price hire. I like Mike Price at Washington State. He did a great job up there. If that's the case, and they set him up, as you're pretty much pointing towards, that it doesn't show much better judgment on Mike Price's part than if he just went to the strip club on his own. But I don't doubt that, I guess. If you don't like a guy, you're going to do what you have to do. Subterfuge, right? Overthrew all night. Yeah, he was. This was definitely Michael Penix's worst night. It turns out he had some rib issues the last few weeks. Whatever. There's no excuses. There's hurt and there's injured, and if you're injured, you shouldn't be playing. But he didn't make excuses either. Michael Penix has had a great year. He's a great 2 years. I don't think he's going to be a top 10 draft pick. I don't know that he's going to be a first round draft pick. I think he's end of first round, early second round myself. Probably McCarthy as well. But this was Michael Penix's worst game of the year for sure. But you know what? Until that fourth quarter where Michigan really just started to take control, I mean, I still had the feeling Michael Penix was going to find a way, like he had all year. And, Michigan was just dominant, running the ball. 303 yards, I think, rushing. Carrying back to Bama. Bama surprised a number of Alabama guys in the portal this year. Wondered if they knew. It's possible. Karen, John DeLon, who's also down there at the SEC, is an LSU fan. Don't, hate him for that. He mentioned earlier that there was some chatter that Nick had told the university before the season this would be it for him, and that they had started talking to Dan Lanning at Oregon. So I guess there's a question for you, Karen. Do you think that's where you want to go? I'm curious. I think Dabo Swinney's going to be in the mix. I think Dan Lanning will be in the mix. There's some other guys that will get brought up that shouldn't be in the mix. But I think Dabo Swinney's a good fit. John does not. He's only a good fit. Let me clarify. He's a good fit if he embraces the realities of today's college football. If he doesn't, then he's not a good fit and he won't be hired. But Dan Lanning would be a good hire as well. And I'm curious whether Karen, who's our big Bama fan tonight, agrees. Good evening, CA. Good to have you with us. How are you? I'm right. I'm always right. Steve? Good. I'm glad you're getting better, buddy. Very happy to hear that. Good man. John DeLon, Michigan was just flat out bullied by Washington for 3 quarters. Actually, 2 quarters, because it was pretty much dead even the second and third quarters. The first and fourth quarters, Michigan was just, as John said, bullied them. I mean, this thing could have been over early. 17-10 at half is a testament, I think, to the Washington defense playing better than people expected in the sense that they didn't give up a lot of points. They gave up a ton of yardage. But we knew that was going to happen. I bet them, and I knew that was going to happen. But as they have all year, they came up with some big stops when they had to and held them to field goals instead of touchdowns and the such. So anyway, all in all, yes, 34-13, and maybe it wasn't as close as that. Does anyone think Penix? I'm not. Again, I don't know. Let me see Daniels play against Michigan. I don't know where we were in this conversation when it happened, John, to be honest with you. I think Michael Penix deserved to be in the finalists. But I think, you did convince me by the time we got to the Heisman that Jaden Daniels probably deserved it. Jaden Daniels is going to be a better pro prospect. Again, that's got nothing to do with the Heisman. I always say this. You have to cut the conversation off. I don't care. When we're talking about college quarterbacks and pro quarterbacks, I don't really care. Now, we can have a discussion now that they're leaving, which one would be the better pro quarterback, and that's definitely going to be Daniels in my mind. Again, they both had great years. We can leave it at that. Both great players. What happens with Alabama? Good evening to Alan Perales from over at Let Talk Sports. Good to have you with us. His team, he's probably very interested in Nick Saban leaving Alabama, as his team, the Oklahoma Sooners, are soon to be part of the SEC. What happens to Alabama going forward? We've had that discussion a little bit here tonight, Alan, and we're going to hear in the coming days. They're going to have to make a decision on a coach pretty quickly. I would think they can't. This cannot be a long, drawn out process because, we're in the middle of the portal moves. You've got assistant coaches that you've got to get put together, and they're being hired for other staffs as we speak. I don't know. Maybe that's why it's got to be somebody who's going to come in and leave their staff in place, or somebody that's going to bring all of their people with them. It's going to be interesting to see what happens here. I would think we'll have an answer here maybe by the weekend. So there's a school of thought. I think Dabo Swinney, if he'll change his mindset. John DeLon, our SEC elitist, says no. He says there's already a deal he thinks in place. He's heard chatter. There's a deal in place with Dan Lanning already. CA says tired but stacked. Oh, the firewood stacked for CA. Excellent. Glad to hear you working hard. Karen says not Dabo. Will be hard to come up with a great replacement. Very hard. I mean, as I said, whoever they bring in, it doesn't matter whether it's, and Dabo Swinney's a great coach. You may not want him there, Karen. John may not want him there. He's still a great coach. He's been a great coach. But that doesn't mean you're going to succeed either. It is hard to be the guy that follows the guy. All those names I mentioned before we got to Nick Saban that followed Bear Bryant can tell you that. So she speaks, not Dabo. I like when John yells at me. He guarantees me that Dabo will not be the next Alabama coach because you just can't trust Dabo will change enough to. Again, I don't disagree. Dabo has got to embrace this, or Dabo will be damaged goods because he's not going to succeed anywhere. Not Clemson, not Northwestern. Nowhere is Dabo going to succeed. I don't know why I said Northwestern. He's not going to succeed anywhere unless he changes his approach. And he's a stubborn guy. And then there's the question, too. You know, Dabo's a great coach. He's a stubborn coach. He doesn't like the NIL. He doesn't like the portal. He doesn't agree with it, so he doesn't make the right use of it. But there's other things that come with Dabo as well that, again, it's the Deep South, so maybe it still won't matter. But, you know, the religious undertones that Dabo brings and permeate throughout the program don't resonate with everybody. So there's that factor too. And now it is still the Deep South, so it may not be a problem. It would be a bigger problem here with us Yankees, John. And I'm not saying that's right. I can tell you that right now. But that could be a problem too. Stars hockey for CA and TNT tonight. Go Stars. Hopefully soon, if we're talking about the replacement, yeah, I think if we're still talking about when they will name a replacement, it will be probably by the weekend. I believe that Sean McVay would be the next Bama coach over Dabo. I don't know how serious John's being there. College football is literally, this is Sonia, literally a baby NFL these days. And what about Harbaugh? Listen, Harbaugh is not coming back to Michigan. And by the way, for you people getting back to this game and the championship for Michigan again, sorry, congratulations. Michigan had a great game, a great year. You talk all I want, and we'll get into your, I know John will be all over me here about the drafts and the sign stealing. And for them to go through what they went through this year, and the players and J.J. McCarthy spoke out about this before the playoff, you know, that they feel disrespected by the fact that their hard work has been pretty much swept under the carpet because of these, I'll call them rumors, you'll call them, you know, facts, John. Michigan had a great year this year. If anybody thinks the NCAA at any point, and by the way, the NCAA cannot strip them of this championship because this is college football playoff and the NCAA are two different entities. NCAA cannot do anything about this championship. They can go name their own champion, but they cannot do anything about this championship that Michigan just won. And they're not, and the college football championship committee is not going to strip them, or they wouldn't have let them play. So let's put that to bed first and foremost. Michigan will not be losing this title. Whether there's sanctions put on the school or not. And by the way, J.J. McCarthy's another one. Some other people have come out and said that there's certainly everybody's doing something to get an edge, John. We just found out about the breach to the database that all these schools use to house their film and other information was compromised. And it was not by Michigan, by the way, but Michigan's information was part of the information that was compromised. We know that Ohio State has gone out and looked to get an edge on Michigan. We know that it's, again, you'll tell me, oh, it hasn't been brought out. There's no evidence. So I know Sports Illustrated is not a credible source, apparently. But anyway, to Jim Harbaugh is not coming back. I don't think. He's got a 5-year contract for $11 million a year on the table, unsigned. He can come back if he wants. There'll probably be some consequences because once people start to try to find something, they'll find some more. We already know this. I mean, if the NCAA got a hair caught and wanted to go after Alabama, they'd find something. If they wanted to go after LSU, they'd find something. They did with the basketball program. If they wanted to go after Ohio State, they'd find something. But with that said, I don't think Harbaugh's coming back, not because of that. If he comes back, you know, there'll be sanctions maybe, and maybe they can't play for a national championship next year. I don't know. I don't think that should be the case, but I don't know. It's very likely that this isn't done. Despite the suspensions this year. But Jim Harbaugh is going to be in the NFL next year. I think there's very little doubt about that. And you can hate Jim Harbaugh. I mean, I don't think Jim Harbaugh is the best person in the world. I think he's a bit disingenuous. But he's a great football coach. You have to give him that. So even if they were stealing signs, which fine, they probably were. I've said that 100 times. I don't condone cheating. All I do is tell you that everybody else is trying to get ahead. And once it was brought to light, they had to play the hardest part of their schedule and still ran the table. Trailed once in the fourth quarter. It's a good football team. Not as good as Georgia was in 22. Probably not as good as Alabama was a couple of years before that. I don't remember the exact years. I want to say 17 or 18. But they're a worthy national championship. And Harbaugh's probably going to be in the NFL. Raiders. Sonia talked about the Raiders earlier being a good job. I think Davis would probably love to have Jim Harbaugh. As with several other teams. I think Sonia's Carolina Panthers would love to have Jim Harbaugh. We're not going to get into a lot of NFL coaching news. We're talking about Jim Harbaugh, not every coach opening. Just places Jim Harbaugh would be interested, which is probably L.A., Las Vegas, Carolina. I did hear he had some extensive talks with, and David Tepper will not meet his demands. Steven is going to take a special coach to coach Bama. Agreed. Dan Lanning might be that guy. I like Dan Lanning's makeup up there at Oregon. He's done a great job at Oregon. And if John DeLong is right about this, then I think Alabama will probably be heading in the right direction. But it won't be easy, no matter what. It will take a special coach. Sometimes it takes a while. I named 10 guys, or whatever the number was, that it took between Bear Bryant and Nick Saban to get it right, or all the way right. Gene Stallings again. When I say that, I know I'm probably disrespecting Gene Stallings a little bit, and I don't want to. He's a really good football coach. Well, it's yelling in the world of the internet, but that's fine. I understand, John. I'm trying to keep my voice low, keep you calm. Kirby Smart. Listen, Kirby will get a call, Karen. I don't think he's going to go. Be very interesting. And I know that Rick Sherlock, I don't know if Rick's still with us or not, but I know that Rick Sherlock would be very, very disappointed if Kirby were to jump ship and go to hated Alabama Crimson Tide. But if you're Alabama, you got to at least call him and see, he might hang up on you, but he spent a lot of time there with Nick. He'd probably be a great guy. And if he's sniffing around to the Falcons, which I don't think he is, I think the Falcons are sniffing around him, and there's no. And then John, you can comment on that too if you'd like. I think you were here at the top when I talked about some of the rumors that the Falcons were kicking the tires on Kirby Smart, and that Kirby wasn't kicking back. I think there's nothing to that. I don't think there's any chance Kirby Smart's leaving for the NFL at this point in time, or maybe ever. Say Harbaugh stole the giraffe. This show has given giraffes a horrible name. I have to apologize for giraffes all over the world for the pain and anguish I've caused you guys recently because of saying, if I hold a giraffe up and it's a running play, well, then I ought to know the next time I hold up a giraffe, it's a running play. Lack of institutional control charges are going to hit in the coming months. Maybe so. Doesn't change the fact that Jim Harbaugh and Michigan have a national championship, and that will not be taken away from them, John. NCAA cannot do anything except maybe crown their own champion, which doesn't change anything. The college football championship is a separate entity from the NCAA. No school in their right mind would hire Harbaugh now because he's probably about to be hit with a 5 to 10 year show cause. Whatever, it doesn't matter. He's not going to stay. If he stays in college, he's staying at Michigan. And if he doesn't stay, he's going to get a big contract in the NFL and say, well, Pete Carroll did the same thing at USC. Got out in front of the posse. Again, stuff happens. And I'm not saying Pete Carroll did a great job at USC. Were people running amok behind the scenes? Yes. I still don't think people running amok. Does it reach the point of lack of institutional control? One guy. You had one rogue assistant. Now, that doesn't mean the other assistants didn't make use of the information. I'm not saying they didn't. I've never said they haven't. But lack of institutional control has got to reach higher levels, or I'm sorry, it's got to be worse than what we've looked at here at Michigan. Come on. Lack of institutional control is what went on at SMU 40 years ago. It's what went on at Baylor back in the 2010s under our Bryles. That's lack of institutional control. When your players are running around, assaulting women all over the city and on campus and wherever else. And, lack of institutional control is, it might have been Baylor again, actually, the basketball team, when one player killed another player. Those things, lack of institutional control has to hit a lot more levels to be put into play than what happened here in Michigan. I know you want to make a bigger deal out of it, and that's fine. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, as you know. I believe that, no matter how wrong it is. Tepper would be hard to work for, though. But I agree, Sonia. But for whatever reason, Harbaugh is very interested in that job. Maybe because he thought he'd get there and get total control. Would be my guess. I still think, and I've said this throughout the whole college football season this year, that I thought Harbaugh would end up in the silver and black and in Vegas. It's not just sign stealing; it's computer crimes. First of all, no. The computer crimes. Where's the computer crimes? Where's that? I don't see any allegations of computer crimes. The computer crimes were filed were against this software company that houses all the NCAA teams' film, and Michigan has not been implicated in that, other than the fact that their information was stolen by other schools. As I said to you, John, schools that are trying to get an edge, just like Michigan was. And I've heard a lot of people around the world of college football say the same thing. That this is a lot of ado about nothing. Again, I don't condone cheating. Never have. When my Patriots cheated, I didn't condone it. All I said was, they're doing what everybody else is doing. You can believe that or not. I'm not sticking my head in the sand. So Rick thinks he's not going anywhere. He's going to take his $11 million, ride out the whatever happens at Michigan. Not sure. Do I think Savannah will coach in the NFL? Who? Who's Savannah? You lost me, Steve. You got to help me out. I'm trying to figure out who you might be talking about. Jim's a coward, and there's no way he's hanging around for the NCAA to collect their pound of flesh. If he runs, I mean, I don't know that he's a coward. Why should he if he's got other opportunities? And again, there's not one shred of evidence, John, other than he didn't keep a close enough eye on these lower assistants There's not one shred of evidence that Jim Harbaugh said, go do this. I'm not saying Jim Harbaugh didn't make use of the information. The players say they didn't make use of the information. Again, I don't know if it makes him a coward. That's a pretty big word. He's got other opportunities. He'll take it. Oh, Saban. No, I don't think Saban will coach the NFL. Saban had his run in the NFL. He hated it in Miami. And the NFL's, if anything, worse today than it was then as far as prima donnas. And I think Nick Saban's done. Do I think somebody might try to talk him out of retirement? You're probably going to have about 9 jobs available here. I'm sure he gets a phone call or two. I don't think there's any way he comes back to the NFL after the tenure he had in Miami. Those 3 years did not go well. Did make the playoffs one year, but it wasn't a good fit, and he couldn't wait to get out of there. Here, you can consider this yelling. Computer crimes. The FBI has an active investigation into computer crimes committed at the University of Michigan. I'll educate myself, John. I'll do that. Hello, Augustine. Augustine must be sad because we've talked about Dan Lanning going from his beloved Oregon Ducks to Alabama, if John is right. And John's right about most things in the SEC. I don't know that he's right about everything in the Big Ten, but that's his, yeah, say that. Again, I don't see him going to the NFL. Sorry, but the NCAA, I won't buy Jim's Babe in the Woods routine. As far as the NCAA is concerned, the buck stops with Jim. Listen, I'm not saying you're wrong. The head coach at the end of the day is responsible for the actions of his staff. I agree with that, John. But that's different than him ordering it to happen. And I'm not saying he's a babe in the woods. I'm not saying I've never once said he didn't know what was going on necessarily. Once the information was brought to him, they may very well have used it. I will tell you this, that if the NCAA cracks down on this violation, which, by the way, they pretty much helped bring about by not putting radios in the radio headsets in the helmets. They have them in high school. They have them at the lower levels of college football. They have them in the NFL, but we don't have them at the highest level of college football. We'd rather hold up signs of giraffes. There, you got your context with the giraffes, John. And by the way, I understand the head coach, Art Briles, had to take a fall of Baylor because he was the guy in charge. Lack of institutional control. He had players running all over the campus raping women. I just offended rapists now, probably. Coach Collins at SMU. Again, maybe he didn't know everybody was getting paid, but he wasn't bringing people to pay. I shouldn't say bringing in people to pay people, but when they said, hey, we got some money and we can bring so-and-so here, he didn't say we aren't doing that. So yeah, look, the buck always stops with the head coach, and it should. But again, lack of institutional control. Again, if the FBI is investigating them and this goes further, there's different allegations than what I've heard so far. Well, then maybe so. But from what I've heard so far, this shadow investigation that the FBI's got going on. I mean, where do we read this on Drudge or what? Let me see if I can find anything real quick. FBI investigates Harbaugh. University of Michigan confirms FBI has joined a joint probe. This was back in October. Harbaugh's open the season to us. Yeah. I can't get into this whole thing right now. Again, I will say again, just for the sake of brevity, if this takes on more information, more and different crimes, John, then I'll change my tune. And I'll admit, one thing I will do with you, John, is I'll admit when I'm wrong. So far, I'm not wrong. To me, there's nothing to admit I'm wrong about. When I'm wrong, I admit it. And I admit it here. My tapes don't get lost like Mike Francesa, WFAN, and some of these other guys who, when they make bad predictions or whatever, the tapes get lost. I don't ever do that. I'm wrong a lot. And I come on the show the very next week and say, boy, I blew that one. I was all over Washington. I didn't think they could possibly lose this game to Michigan. I thought Washington had everything going for them. Nope. I was wrong. Augustine says Dan wants to stay in Oregon. Dan wants to stay in Oregon. Duck sign 6 years. They better hurry up because Alabama's going to be filling this position pretty quickly. So I think there's a possibility that Connor arranged for Michigan to pay for those scouting trips with no help from Jim. That's just a foolish statement. I'm saying that, yes, I'm saying that that Jim did not arrange for this guy to go and do this. I am saying that, yes. I could be wrong. If it's proven that I'm wrong, and again, there's not a shred of evidence, John, not one shred of evidence that points to Jim Harbaugh having ordered this guy to go and do this. Now, I'm not saying nobody at the university sanctioned this. If they paid him, that'd be sanctioning it, I guess, if they paid his expenses. Nothing points. Again, will Harbaugh take the fall or be blamed for this if it comes to that? Yes, because he's the head coach. But again, that is not an admission of guilt. I mean, it's he's guilty because he's the guy in charge. I mean, you said that yourself. Where's the evidence? You always talk about evidence, John. I talk about the Ohio State and Rutgers gathering information about the signals Michigan uses to give to Purdue. To use for themselves in Ohio State's case, and also to help Purdue in the championship game against Michigan 2 years ago. And you say, well, it's just a story in Sports Illustrated. There's no hard evidence like there is here. But there's no evidence that Jim Harbaugh knew anything about this before it happened. Again, I'm not saying he didn't know about it after the fact. Two different things, right? What do you got here? Lanning's buyout is only $20 million. That's cheap, by the way, John. Definitely. But here you'll get no argument from me. We might as well drop the Harbaugh thing until more happens because we're not going to get anywhere. I'm going to admit I'm wrong, or you're not going to admit you're wrong when the rest of the story comes out. But he definitely is. There's no doubt that Bama's a better job than Oregon. And by the way, $20 million today is a very cheap buyout for a head coach. And Augustine, I'm sorry if Alabama comes a knocking, Dan Lanning is flying across the country to answer the door. Again, well, that's fine. That's fine, John. But you want to go on about this like there is evidence that Jim Harbaugh knew everything from the very beginning. And maybe he did. Maybe it's just like Watergate. And it all leads back to the main guy from the very beginning. Or not. You're the guy who brings up evidence all the time. Not me. Because I sit here sounding like I'm condoning cheating. I'm not. Never have. Never once. Not when the Patriots were doing it, my team was doing it in the NFL. I never have condoned it. All I said was, look in your neighbor's yard. You're going to see the same damn thing. Just saying. We can get to a lot of stuff tonight. We can bring up anything you guys want to talk about, by the way. We talked a little bit about the finals. Michigan's a champion, end of story. Not going to get into the transfer portal a lot tonight. I might get some into college basketball here for the last 20 minutes or so before we get here. John, I can keep going on this if you want, but again, we're really just kind of a standoff here right now. Let's look at some of the other news quickly in football before I move on, and we can certainly continue this conversation as we go forward here as well. Can I please? Thank you. That's not what I wanted. All right, let's just do it here. There were a couple other stories. There's going to be the NCAA is going to put some rules into place. The NCAA president, Charlie Baker, excuse me. He, first of all, by the way, he did say Michigan earned the title fair and square, John, to use your quotations there. He also has talked about the NCAA adopting some new NIL rules to help athletes protect themselves. Again, this is kind of goes towards what Charlie Baker had floated before. He's going to continue. He's advocating for subdivisions, number one. He's advocating for players at the top level to get paid $30,000 a year and to rein in the NILs, but also let the schools, and these new rules that they're proposing now are also going to let the athletic departments be more involved, which is very funny. I find it ironic because if you think the NCAA, if you think the athletic departments and the football programs aren't involved with the NIL collectives now, then you're not paying attention. So anyway, there's some new rules coming up about that. And this all stems from what Charlie Baker brought up about his proposal about making some changes. We'll dive into this deeper, as the story warrants. What else? By the way, we don't have our Ohio State's fans with us tonight, but they should be happy as they've got a real quarterback heading their way in the transfer portal, Will Howard. And we'll dive into the portal a little bit more as we go forward. And John's got another comment here. There's plenty of evidence of wrongdoing that started 3 years ago. That started 3 years ago. 3 years ago when Jim's back was up against the wall and in danger of being fired. Yeah, right. They took money away from him. They made him make changes in his staff. And maybe that's when they started doing this. I don't know. Again, I will tell you, I can go back to 2019 or 2020 if you want. And I will check every single program in the country, John, and we'll find evidence of wrongdoing, recruiting violations, stealing of draft signs, whatever you want to look for. Will it always be the same everywhere? No. But if I go to every major college football program and look for evidence of wrongdoing, I'll find it if I look hard enough. I shouldn't say every. That's where I get in trouble, right? Let's say, and I've heard this number bandied about by a lot of people who follow the world of college football and are a lot closer to it than I am. Talk about 75 to 80% of these major college football programs are doing something to try to get an edge. whether it's recruiting, whether it's a sign stealing that we're talking about, whether it's practices that aren't supposed to be happening. But we want to bury our head in the sand and say, oh, no, that stuff's not going on. There's no evidence of that. You know why? Because nobody's looking for it. They've got themselves on this hunt against Jim Harbaugh in Michigan, and that's where they're focused, laser focused. We aren't going to look around. Same thing happened with the Patriots. Whatever. Athletics department. Yeah. I'm being lawfully selective on your standard of proof. Actually, no. Again, I didn't say I had proof. Common sense, John, I know the word doesn't seem to mean the same thing to you and I. But common sense says if it quacks like a duck and barks like a duck, or quacks like a duck, if it walks like a duck and it sounds like a duck, it's a duck. There's stuff that goes on. Come on. We all know most of these football programs are involved of steering the collectives to the players that they want. What do the collectives know about great players? Especially as they're jumping into the portal right and left. Oh, gosh. And again, I say there's selective somebody's going to get nailed for stuff, and there's going to be selective prosecution then too. Because whoever gets nailed, there's one school or 10 schools, we can go out and get 45 more. Again, whether we're talking about NIL violations or whether we're talking about recruiting or whether we're talking about sign stealing. So, come on, John. Anyway, we can circle back to this. It's all good. What's going on in the world of college basketball? Let's talk about this a little bit. I'll go back to football. I promise you we will. I won't stay here. I've still got so much college basketball to get at we haven't done yet. We'll look quickly at the polls. We'll look at maybe some big games coming up this weekend. I want to talk a little about St. John's. And again, speaking of polarizing head coaches, Rick Pitino has got St. John's playing really good basketball in the Big East, and that's good for college. That's good for college basketball here in the East. The Big East is important to the East. It's not nearly what the Big East was, but it's going to be better when St. John's is better, and they're getting there now. They beat Villanova on the road, even though Villanova is not that great this year or last year. Since Jay Wright left, St. John's is starting to make some noise. I was looking to see if they got any votes. They got 18 votes in the poll this week, starting to move up. They are actually, by the way, we'll get into the poll in a second. And I know John still got some comments up there, probably about football, which I'll go back to. St. John's is 3-1 in the Big East, 11-4 overall. On a 3-game winning streak, Rick Pitino, again, another guy who's polarizing, but he's taken Boston, he's taken Providence, he's taken Kentucky, where he won, he's taken Louisville, where he won, and they took away his championship because of whatever, lack of institutional control. And he's taken Iona to the NCAA tournament. 5 schools, turned them all around. None of them were winning when he got there. None. Got Providence to a Final Four. Got Kentucky to a national championship and several Final Fours before he went to the NBA. Got Iona into the tournament in the MAC to rehabilitate himself. He will. I will tell you right now, he'll have St. John's in the NCAA tournament this year. And again, he's an interesting guy to talk about since we're talking about Harbaugh, because Pitino's as polarizing as Harbaugh, and he's a guy that John should know from the SEC days when he was at Kentucky. Common sense tells me Harbaugh knew about the scouting scheme and played a part in arranging it. That's fine. Again, no, not necessarily. Again, these are assumptions, right? So I'm making an assumption that he didn't know. You're allowed to make an assumption that he did. Common sense is more, and again, I guess you're probably right. It's fine. So I'm being selective in my common sense. You should be, or you don't have any common sense if you're not being selective about where you apply it. Or how you apply it, I should say. You should apply it always. And again, even if he knows about it, I don't know that my argument's really going to change, John. Because I'm going to tell you again, because common sense tells me that Ryan Day knows what's going on at Ohio State as well. And that Brian Kelly knows whatever Notre Dame might have been doing to try to get an edge. And he knows whatever LSU might be trying to do to get an edge. Whether it's in recruiting or NIL, which are tied together, signal stealing, getting hookers for the kids. I don't know. I don't know how that gets you an edge, but maybe it does. I'm not being selective. I'm being pretty, I'm pretty, common sense tells me if one guy's doing something wrong, so somebody else, somewhere. Because Jim Harbaugh is not smart enough to have been the first guy ever to come up with this. And to be the only guy doing it now, when there's also evidence that other guys are doing it right in his own league against him. You got me a little bit on the selectivity. Yes, I'll give you that, John. I'll give you that. Busy week in all sports for sure, Carlos. You and I will have a lot to chat about on Friday. A couple programming notes, by the way, before I continue with some college basketball or whatever you guys want to talk about now. This is still it's a sports huddle, but we're starting to kind of college sports huddle. This night's been dominated by Saban and Harbaugh, and that's fine. We'll be on just a couple programming notes. We're on Are You Serious this weekend live at 9 a.m. with the Mad New Yorker, Carlos Chavez, who just spoke up here. But some programming notes. Sunday's Stream of Consciousness. I'm at a wedding in Rhode Island. Most likely not going to do the show live at 8:30. I'm going to try to do the Mac and Jack show quick before we hit the road to come home. When I get home that day, I might try to do an impromptu show in the afternoon. We'll see how I feel because I've got to get myself ready because I'm heading to Vegas at 3 o'clock in the morning Monday for a trade show and for work. And I'll be there all week. So next week's, so Sunday, maybe an impromptu show later on the day. Next Wednesday's college Sports Huddle will not air live here on all of these platforms. It will air live Saturday morning, the following Saturday morning, not this Saturday morning, the following Saturday morning, on all the platforms because we're live on Roku. We have a replay of the show on Roku at 9 a.m. on Saturday. So when I can't do the show live on Wednesdays, I try to do it live on all the platforms at 9 o'clock Saturday morning. That's what will happen that day, assuming I make it back from Vegas in one piece. So lots to chat about. Nebraska beating Purdue. What a great game. So in college basketball, Purdue lost already this week. So we'll have a new number one, by the way, this week. As Nebraska beats them 88-72 in Big Ten play just the other night. So we'll have a new new number one next week, most likely. Right now, as we stand, we've got the same top 25. I'm sorry, not the same top 25. Keith, Jesus. Oh, God. The first six are the same six, except that Houston moved ahead of Kansas. Kansas dropped to 3. Houston moved up to 2. But then you got UConn, still 13-2, playing really good basketball. Tennessee, Kentucky, we're all the same. And North Carolina has moved up into the top 7. Arizona up 2 spots. Oklahoma up 2 spots to number 9. What else? Illinois has dropped. Illinois is in a mess. They got a kid who, oh, God, these guys who get involved in this off-the-court stuff. Now he's been suspended by the university, and they're trying to – he's gone to court to get himself back on the team. You talk about things that will kill a season. This stuff is just – this is like – if this is actually accurate, you know, these things are more important than holding up giraffes and stealing the signs, right? Marquette with a tough week, drops 4 spots. They lost a couple of games. They're number 11. Duke up to tied for number 11 with Marquette, up 3 spots. Memphis up 2. Penny Hardaway doing a great job at Memphis, 13-2 this year so far. Baylor up 4 spots. Wisconsin up 6. Auburn up 9 spots this week. They just jumped into the top 25 last week. Bruce Pearl, another polarizing figure, as we're talking about polarizing coaches. The Mountain West doing really well, by the way. Colorado State, BYU, San Diego State. They're 17, 18, 19. 20 is Utah State. I thought there was one more in here. That's it. 4 teams in the top 20 for the Mountain West. Underrated sports conference. I keep saying that. Clemson falls 5 to number 21. Creighton back up to 22. Gonzaga barely holding on. Probably this is looking like a bubble watch team, by the way, going forward. And Florida Atlantic, after beating Arizona a couple weeks ago, continues to lose games and fall almost out of the top 25 after moving close to the top 10. They're down to number 25. Texas is number 25. Dropping out was James Madison, Ole Miss, and Providence. Again, St. John's with 18 votes. Very close. What do you got here? Baylor game, St. John's tonight. Providence came back. Did they lose that game, Carlos? St. John's? So I'm talking them up, and while I'm talking them up, they're losing. We're getting into the good part of college basketball season. Conference, once football ends, conference play starts in basketball. It leads to a great last half of January, all of February, leads into March Madness and conference tournaments, and obviously the NCAA tournament, which we'll be talking about a lot. Carlos just recovered from the UW loss. It was a tough loss for UW. Look, they didn't play well enough to win. Michael Penix had his worst game of the year, as we said earlier. It happens. Again, 2 key plays. He misses his best wide receiver wide open on 4th down in the middle of the second quarter, would have been a touchdown. And then coming out of the half, it's down 17-10, where they really had no right to be, probably. And then he throws that awful interception that really killed their chances. Oh, thank you, CA. Safe travels. I appreciate it. Can't wait to get to Albany International Airport at 3 a.m. Monday morning. I'm out. Good to have you, John. You know I love you, buddy. You test me, and I like that, John. If you're still here, I don't know if you're gone or not, but you test me, and I like that. Because you hold your ground. You got to go to arguments. They're wrong. John's a good guy. John's a smart guy too. He knows the SEC too. So I don't doubt the Dan Lanning comments that John has talked about tonight. So what else we have going on here? We got a couple minutes left before I wrap it up. I might wrap up a little bit early because I'm going to be on with Sonia on her show here. Let me put her stuff back up here before I lose it. So you guys, if you're looking for some more sports talk, a lot of college football. I think we're going to talk a lot of the NFL tonight because it's a football show that Sonia has. So I'm trying to find your. I got to go to the top. Oh, where are you? Where are you, Sonia? I know you put this up for me. There it is. I'll be on at 9 o'clock with Sonia on the all things football from a lady's perspective. You can catch that on YouTube, and I think you can get it here on Facebook. I'm going to try to share the show to TGI Sports Talk when I get on, and we're going to talk some NFL coaching news. Obviously, a lot of stuff going on there. Playoffs coming up. Maybe a little bit of draft talk if there's time. But we'll see how that goes. So you guys have been a great crowd again tonight, and love the debates John and I get into. It's all good stuff. Let's see if there's anything else going on before I wrap it up. In the world of college basketball, I should talk about Purdue star Edney, tops Wooden midseason 25. Great player. We'll see what he does in the NBA because their centers aren't. He's more of a traditional center than guys normally we're seeing in the Big Ten. The Big Ten. Get rid of that. In the NBA these days. LeBron keeps playing. Who's this guy? Marty Blazer, college hoops bribery informant, dies at 53. He prompted an FBI investigation into bribery in college basketball. He died at his home. I wonder if it was under. He'd gone to prison. This is long after the. I thought this might have been tied to the BC scandal from the 70s, but not so much. I guess he wouldn't be old enough for that. Not a lot of other good stuff here going on. Let's see. Let me take a look at some college basketball games that are coming up here in the next few weeks or next few days, I should say. Tonight, got a lot of stuff going on. It's so hard. There's so many games. It's very hard to kind of pick out the ones I want to look at. Let me just look at the top 25 games. Let's probably make this easier, right? Won't let me do that, though. Seriously, you won't let me do that. All right, let's try it this way. I think this way I can. Top 25 tonight. UCF is beating Kansas right now, number 3 Kansas. Tennessee, Mississippi State's playing. Clemson, Virginia Tech. North Carolina State. Always a good tussle. North Carolina State's actually 3-0 in the ACC. They're a little bit of a surprise. UConn's got Xavier later. Wisconsin, Ohio State, Oklahoma, TCU, Butler, and Marquette will be played tonight. Looking ahead, let's see if we got some decent matchups to talk about. Gonzaga, Santa Clara. Gonzaga, man, might be a bubble team. 144 straight weeks now in the 143, I think, straight weeks in the poll. Just barely hanging in there. We'll see. Michigan State will play Illinois tomorrow night, too. Illinois with all those problems that I mentioned. And also Michigan State off to a very, very disappointing start. Let's see. Don't really care. What is this? Why did I lose top 25? What happened? I'll tell you, the world has got a mind of its own here tonight. Probably nothing going. There's no top 25 games on Friday. We got Georgia, Tennessee, Syracuse, 10-4, 1-2 under Adrian Autry to get started. They've got North Carolina on Saturday. St. John's will have Creighton. Oklahoma plays Kansas, both top 10 teams. That'll be interesting. And a bunch of other games. Guys, we're going to wrap it up here tonight. Been a great, great, great show. Good to have you, Steve. Glad having you with us. I have fun with this show. You're welcome to join any show and comment, Steven. And don't worry about me yelling at you like I yell at John DeLong, because I yell at everybody, and we have fun. It's all good. We leave as friends all the time. Steve, great to have you with us. Everybody, great to have you with us. Keith Engle for TGI Sports Talks College Sports Huddle. Catch us Friday morning at 9 a.m. with the Mad New Yorker for Are You Serious? I'll also be on with Mac and Jack at 8 o'clock before that. 8:30, I'm sorry, before that. And then, Friday? Yes, I will be on Friday, and then Sunday is a little bit up in the air. So we'll see you when we see you on the weekend. Have a great weekend, guys.